this crazy obsession. I'm totally addicted with this. I'm be the first one to admit that for me, you know, it's just this ridiculous thing that I do for about 3 months that I absolutely have no control over. It's just that it's life's challenge. So this is the cover of the book. As you can see, I've aged significantly in the interpretation of one of the art students in the college. I'll share a little bit about the cover shortly, but I wanted you to see a little bit about where this all headed. Really didn't really know where I was headed. I never have an absolute destination. I just know forward is the direction and see where it's taken me. In the 30 minutes that I get to spend with you, I'm going to share a little bit about the story behind the story, because everything has a story. You know, it's not always a linear path. It's just sort of sometimes some random good coincidences that take you places and the people that you meet. But that's what I looked like in '86, 6 years prior to that picture. I started at RIT as an instructor. RIT does not even hire people as instructors anymore, to share how long this picture was taken. I'd come there from Henry Ford Hospital as a medical photographer and naturally took to the microscope pretty much immediately. That was one of the courses that I was assigned at the first quarter. We were on 10-week quarters at the time. And you know, I photographed a lot of different things. I've photographed insects doing it. I've photographed things under the microscope for physicians. I've tried to photograph just about everything. And in about 10 years after I started there, some of my colleagues said, you know, you should show your microscopy in art shows, because nobody knows what the hell it is, but they think it's incredibly beautiful. And so I started to sort of be curious about how that worked, because RIT is a very big private school, and I teach in the College of Imaging Arts and Sciences, and there's about 3,000 students there, but of the 3,000 students, 2,800 are working on art degrees. There's only 200 kids that are working on technical things, and so you can do the math about the proportion of faculty doing art to faculty that are technologists. So I work with a whole bunch of fine artists, people that are fascinated with glass and ceramics and all kinds of things. And it's been really interesting how that affects the way I think about things, too. This is a random slide. It came to me from Jack Vetter's collection. I just found it about 2 months ago. I bet you no one can guess what it is. It's pretty remarkable. It looks like a face to me. Does everybody see the face? It's a garden snake tongue. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, you know, that's how the whole world of microscopy has been for me. What is it? And of course, molars look like molars, except we want them in our mouth. And then, of course, there's snowflakes. So I've tried to photograph lots of different things, and for me, working with snowflakes is a hobby. It's not something I do to make money, although I have profited in small ways. I haven't figured out how to monetize it yet. I would wish I could eventually, but for now I do it because it's not my job. Nobody's telling me to do it, and I think as people that work in intense situations, sometimes we all need hobbies. We need outlets. We need to sort of purge from our brain. This was work. This was a big work. This was sort of my are we not on this one? I only have this one, right? So I did bring a copy if anybody would like to look at this. And at RIT and like many universities, you have to publish or perish. You have to stay active in your field. And so this book seemed like the right book to write after almost 30 years at RIT. I'd studied with important people, and so it's an encapsulation of a lot of things that I've heard and learned along the way. We work with invisible spectrums in laboratory and all the kinds of things that you would expect it to be talked about. And some of the small things I've figured out along the way, that you can take your old lenses that don't work and turn them into focusing stages on your close-up pictures. That's very easy to work. So you can take all those old manual focus lenses that you have and put a little brick on the bottom and it won't move, and use some gaffer's tape and you can focus tiny things like dental drill bits pretty easily and very precisely, and you can do focus stacking with them at really no cost. But this is sort of the story that I'm going to share today. That's Emily. I blame all of this on her. She went to Buffalo, to the Science Museum there, and this is a guy by the name of Wilson Bentley. Wilson Bentley was a nutcase. At 14, his mother bought him a microscope, and he sort of took a picture of an ice crystal in Jericho, Vermont, and it sort of became his addiction, much like mine. In 1895, he was using George Eastman dry plate film at the time. And And in 1931, he passed, ironically, walking to his Snowflake Shack. He had a massive heart attack and developed pneumonia, and boom, on his way to take some more ice crystal pictures. His entire archive is in the Buffalo Science Center in Buffalo, of course, and this is a picture of one of his glass plates. And he kept an incredible journal every time he photographed. Every day, even if he didn't photograph, he wrote the weather. And so there's calendars and snowflake guides that still are attributed to Bentley, 100 years later. The process hasn't changed really since the beginning of time, and so Emily says, I want to learn how to take a picture of a snowflake, and I don't know how to take a picture. I don't think we can do that. And I drove home that night, and I said, what a lame answer to a student that's excited to try something new. I said, I'm a teacher. I don't know how to do it, but I told her I don't know how to do it, and I'm not sure. So I felt terrible, and the next morning I found her somehow, and I said, let's go out and try it. And so we did, and it was a disaster, as you might imagine. Nothing worked. Absolutely nothing worked. It's a very difficult thing to do. It looks very easy in the result, but there's too many variables. Everything can go wrong, and usually does. So we catch snowflakes on velvet. Bentley caught snowflakes on velvet. We pick up snowflakes using either spotting brushes that I still have a few of, or needles taped to pencils. Snowflakes have static electricity in them. The atmosphere has static electricity, so they jump from the black velvet to the needle. That's my daughter. She's addicted. So this is way back. She's 27 now. You got to work outside. You can't do this inside. Snowflakes are frozen. You bring them inside, they melt immediately. So you got to be outside, and you have to acclimate your equipment. So everything has to be sort of much like a fireman. You got to be ready to go. When it snows, you got to be ready to go because you're not in charge. You are absolutely not in charge of what happens. The students like it so much, we built what's called the Snowflake Shack at RIT. It's a wooden box with a microscope that's chained to a bicycle rack on campus so that anytime 24/7, when it's winter, they can go photograph because otherwise they would never have a chance to do it. They've come to the house, but truthfully, I'm so selfish, I want to photograph when it snowflakes. And they know, but they are welcome all the time. And in the box is a microscope and a copy stand and a fiber optic and because it's a big university, got an OSHA standard plug box that'll short, turn off if water comes in. Have to get everything cleared. We have a whole department called risk management. So if there's risk, I have to have things assessed. But the box sits there. It's been out, we take it in the summer, of course. And that was our first snowflake picture. Woohoo! Not very excited, not very great, but we did it, and that sort of began the process. Sometimes I keep a blog for the school. That's part of my new job as a recruitment person, and I talk about my addiction. It's totally true. It's a good, healthy addiction, and so I publish. I will also share with you that everything I've learned is just by trial and error. That there's a guy at the Caltech by the name of Kenneth Lebrecht, and Dr. Lebrecht did his PhD in crystal formation and snowflakes, and he's arguably the world's most famous and accomplished snowflake photographer. He has a lab where he makes his own snowflakes, and the things he's doing with them are just extraordinary. These time lapses of crystal formation, and he can turn them around, but he makes the crystal. He sits there and dials in the humidity conditions, and he dials in the temperature and the moisture, and so he wants bigger wings or only on the left side. It's so cheating. It's so not fair. And the thing that, he's told me, so whenever I catch an ice crystal, it's had a rough life. I mean, it might have formed somewhere over Syracuse, headed up to Toronto for a beer, went to Buffalo before it got to Rochester. So all along the way, it's kind of gotten changed. It's got a few pimples, a couple wounds, blurred eyes. So it's rough. It's not smooth. It's not sharp. You'd think of crystals as being super sharp. So none of my crystals have edges like Dr. Lebrecht's. His stuff comes pristine right out of the ice crystal maker. So the edges, the sharpness on his crystals are just remarkable. For anybody that doesn't know where Rochester is, it's on the south shore of Lake Ontario, which is a massive body of water. I think it's like 300 feet deep, and it's 83 nautical miles straight away to Toronto. And it's rather imposing, and it makes a lot of water, and it puts up a lot of humidity. On any given day in winter, you can have that. Lake effect snow is a very real phenomena. The lake evaporates, the temperature is 32 degrees, and it just starts snowing. And 5 miles south of Rochester, it could be blue skies and crystal clear. Lake effect snow often does not have the kind of crystals you would imagine, and so we get about 105 inches of snow every year. And I'm telling you all this because it's sort of part of the story of the book. You know, the content of the book is about snowflakes, and so all of this becomes a little bit relevant. I'll tell you how the book got made shortly, but you know, 12 hours later, Rochester, my street can look like that. It's incredibly beautiful. I can't photograph once the crystals fall. Once they fall, they interact with other crystals and things happen. They pick up moisture, they get stuck to each other, they break wings. So I try to catch them in mid-flight, and once in a while I get lucky. A crystal like this is a pretty rare find, and this was my epic snowflake so far. In 15 years, this is I'm very proud of this one. January 2nd, 2014. I mean, this event lasted about 10 minutes. It snowed for 10 minutes. I like this one. It sort of looks like a Swedish king's crown. The blue comes from anybody that still gets a newspaper. Sometimes your newspaper comes in a blue bag. The blue came from the recycling bag from my newspaper, and I'll talk a little bit how I do that. So this is kind of how the process works. First off, winter is not 12 months. So I only get to photograph during winter. I can't photograph really in spring or summer or fall. So it's got to be winter. Obviously, it has to snow. The snow has to be good snow. The temperature has to be below 32. Actually, in my environment, in my garage, it has to be about 30 because my garage has its own microclimate because it's an attached garage. So it's a little warmer. I got to be available. I mean, if it's snowing at 2 in the morning, I'm sleeping like the rest of the world, right? Or if it's 12 noon, I'm at work. It's torturous to see it burp. I'm always looking at my jacket. What's going on? I have to be able to catch the snowflakes. I have to isolate the snowflakes. I feel much like an archaeologist looking through sand on my little black velvet tray, which was my grandmother's cooking pan, a little porcelain tray. Got a lot of sort of good luck charms. Help it fall. Then I have to light it. You have to put light on things to make them interesting, much like a studio photographer or someone who would do gemstones, tries to show facets of things. And the crystal's constantly changing when I catch it. And so the point of this whole slide is the whole damn thing is random. I am so not in charge of that. And I feel as it gets into November and October, much like somebody who's a big sports fan, it's like opening season. Snow is forecast, first kind of snow, and so I got to make sure everything's clean. You know, the microscope's ready because it's in the garage. So you know how your garages look? Does anybody have like the perfect, like it'd be in American Homes and Gardens? My garage looks terrible. It'd be embarrassing to take a picture of my garage. It's just full of everything. And okay, and so maybe it's 33 degrees, and I know that it's too warm, but I just got to go look at them. And so every time it snows, I run outside and I look, and you can see them melting on my jacket, so I know. Damn. And this process, in and out of the house. Nighttime, it starts snowing. Okay, let's go check it out again. See if and so the temperature goes up and down, and more snow. Oh, God, it's going to be good. And nope, nothing in it. And I'll tell you a little bit why. So there's all kinds of snowflakes. We all have this image of the snowflake in Saks Fifth Avenue windows or whatever, or greeting cards, but snowflakes are not really all the same. There's all kinds of snowflakes. Someone told me Eskimos have 200 names for snowflakes. I don't know if that's true or not, but I actually believe it. So this is called needle or column snow. You can see they're little tubules. I'm amazed at how nature forms these crystals. Do you see these little points? I mean, these are just perfectly formed structures. So this one is I'm not interested in columns personally. This is I call granular snow. It looks just like table salt. Doesn't look like you just took your table salt shaker. So this could be going on for 3 days and you're dying. I'm dying. I want to take a picture of a snowflake and this is all I get to see. Or that. Looks like you chipped ice in your refrigerator. Or like that. Does anybody see the little Amazonian face in this one? I mean, these things, but these are, again, has anybody lived in a place where it's 0 degrees? And you're walking on the snow and it's like crunching under your feet and it looks more like somebody took talcum powder, but there's little tiny things in that. This is called a capped column. So there are little caps on the end of these things. This one, I'll talk a little bit more about it. It has freezer burn. That's rime. You know how you open your ice cream and there's frost growing on it? Well, guess what? Snowflakes grow frost too. Isn't that awful? See, I have yet to make a photograph yet this year. I'm trying to, and everything's conspiring. It looks like styrofoam. But every once in a while, and it could be once a month, you get the right kind of snow. And so this is what's called a stellar plate. All snowflakes start as a six-sided kind of thing. You can see the little six-sided structure in the middle, and then they start growing wings depending on how long they live and what altitude they start at and how far they blow and how much static electricity. And every time they stay aloft, they pick up more water molecules and they grow their wings. And that's why no two snowflakes are alike, because every single one has a different path to the ground. It's maddening. So I'm outside all the time like this, walking around all by myself. It's a very solitary activity, and I'm looking at the tray, and I'm either swearing or doing cartwheels. And I use my little very expensive Nikon snowflake picker-upper. And it jumps from the velvet. Sometimes if it's too warm or too humid, it doesn't work. And I put it on a glass slide. I have to be very ginger because I'm transferring heat to the glass slide by holding it. And I shine light through it. My microscope is a whole bunch of broken stuff that was in the garbage. I have a Bausch & Lomb focusing stage and an old Nikon multifocal. Look at it. Isn't it a beauty? But when I get it right, and you see the garbage bag, that's my go-to blue. This is Tostitos cover. This is an orange jug cover. I use styrofoam and fiber optic lights, and every once in a while, that happens. So that happens. But this is really what happens. Or this. And some of these could be like seconds. So then I decided, well, let's make melting snowflake pictures, because if I'm going to be out here and swear at the damn thing, I may as well photograph it. That's 42 seconds, 72 pictures. Okay? Catch it, and 42 seconds later, it's a drop of water. Awful. Awful. And then, of course, there's got to be more things that conspire against your success. This is called sublimation. So it could be cold, and I catch them, and then they evaporate. They don't melt, they just shrink. So this is 30 seconds. This crystal in 30 seconds went from the crystal on the left to the crystal on the right. And this is a minute. So depending on the time, the clock is ticking from the minute I catch. And then, of course, they can have afflictions. They're afflicted with rime, and they grow frost. And I have no interest in photographing these kinds of crystals. I'm kind of selective about what my interests are and what I'd like them to look like. So rime is, everybody see the little Michelin man in here? So I've been doing this this will be 15 years. I've been doing this, and it's incredibly exciting. Every time I do this, I share them. And so somebody suggested after about a decade of doing it, well, you're kind of the only one that gets to see your pictures, and you should start sharing them with people. And this message is to all of you. You all make incredible pictures sometimes in things you do. And so I started to figure out how to share my pictures in a way that I could get some more exposure. So I started an Instagram account in March 2013. So every day I publish on Instagram. And Instagram has been very good to me. People find me on Instagram. And Time found me on Instagram. I hashtag Time. CNN found me on Instagram. A lot of advertising and agencies that are looking for specialized content are looking for content. So Instagram has been very giving, very giving. A couple weeks ago, I had a picture of a mosquito that I had made probably 4 years ago. And a week later, it was in a nonprofit brochure from a company in the Netherlands that was doing work on blood. And they were talking about the Zika virus. And then I started sending them to weathermen in Rochester. And so Kevin's my buddy now, so he shows them on the weather. And then you do this because you're self-promoting. You got to self-promote. And then I started sending them to the newspaper, and then the reporter got interested in my addiction. And I got the living section, and then a news channel did a feature on me. I don't know if we can play this. It's kind of fun to watch this reporter try to tell my story a little bit. The lavalier's not working at all, is it? How about this one? We got no audio on this one too. But it's all about promoting, you know, because it's one of those things that if I don't do this, the pictures won't get seen, really. And so half the fun is taking pictures to share them, right? I mean, why did you all get into photography? You didn't put the pictures on your hard drive and let them sit there and collect dust. You put them on your hard drives, and then you want to share them. And so for me, that's the joy, the absolute joy I get from making these pictures, even though it's a ridiculous thing to be alone in the freezing cold. I could be out there for an hour, and I don't even feel the cold, and then I realize I have no feeling in my fingers. None. Zero. So one of my alumni works for Smartwool. Anybody know about Smartwool? Smartwool is a company that makes athletic clothing in Colorado. He wanted to live in Colorado because he was a skier. Smartwool. It's a company, his name. And so Garrett was writing me, and he said, you need to start hashtagging CNN. And so I started hashtagging CNN, and then CNN and Time featured my snowflakes. Not because I didn't know. You really don't know who's following you on Instagram. It's kind of sneaky. There's a lot of what are called lurkers. So and then they did a blog on it. And then CNN, of course, is a worldwide news agency. So I had friends in Brazil saying, oh, here's your article in Spanish. And people in Eastern Europe saying, oh, my God, here's your pictures in Croatian. And it's just been crazy. And then CNN put me on their Instagram account. I had 16,000 likes on this picture in about 2 hours. And then one of the news stations came to my house to, you know, the morning shows that we all see from 7 to 9. That was a really awful experience. How do you make snowflake pictures on demand, live on TV? Of course, and the day she came, it was -2. It was awful. There was no snowflakes to be found, but we faked it pretty good. So in about 14 years or so, you know, I'd amassed almost 500 crystal pictures that I like. I mean, some are good, some are great, some are awful, but they're okay. I had made 15 that I would be willing to show, but I had this harebrained idea. Do you ever have harebrained ideas? You get, I'm going to try this. So my very dear friend, and this idea came to me in February, in winter, because I still had a little. So my friend Willie and I have known each other since I got hired at RIT, and we're very close. Willie does wet plate collodion photography. So that's his camera. He makes 11 by 14 plates of things, and that's his wife on an 11 by 14 copper plate. And I said, let's take a picture of a snowflake on a wet plate collodion process. So he came to my house, and in my basement, on my washing machine, we set up his wet plate collodion lab. And of course, now it's got to snow to do this. And it's got to be kind of the right snow, and it's got to be cold enough to do this. And we did a little research. The George Eastman Museum, the Eastman House, is in Rochester, and there's a lot of pretty notable photo historians there. We couldn't find any knowledge of anybody ever having photographed a snowflake with the wet plate collodion process. So we were determined that we were going to do this. So we had to run a test. We had no idea what the exposure time was. You know, because wet plate collodion is a orthochromatic kind of process. It doesn't see anything but blue. It's incredibly slow. Some of Willie's outside exposures are a minute, f2. So we weren't sure what to expect. We made a little test. One of my other friends, Ted Kinsman, is a nutcase too. And so he made a little target for me with a laser, and so I have a little glass snowflake slide calibrated to millimeters, so I can get my magnification set. He's a nut just like I am. And here we are. I think it was 32 degrees, and it's 6 a.m. I call Willie at 5 o'clock. I said, you got to be here. It's snowing now, and he's like, are you friggin' kidding me? And here we go. I wish you could hear the audio because I'm like a little kid, but there's our glass plate. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. We had one chance to do this. The snow was so short and the temperature so warm, but we got one. We got a plate with 2 crystals, and of course, later that day, we sent it to the blog. There they are. Petapixel. Petapixel is a major distribution, so they wrote a story about us, again, about self-promotion. We had to send them the content. And then there's a lady, a good friend on Instagram, who's an illustrator. Her name is Lizzie Harper, and Lizzie did an adult coloring book. Do any of you have adult coloring books? So Lizzie made an adult coloring book on snowflakes and used my crystals as her examples. So she owes me now, of course. We trade. So I got original Lizzie Harper drawings in exchange for using my crystals. But it's been like that. This whole thing has just sort of been like that. So we got to jump ahead. This is Frank Cost. Frank and I live on the same street just by absolute random coincidence. He's a professor in printing, and both of us don't look like that when we first met, but this is how we look now. And Frank's house sits on the corner, so I walk by his house with my dogs every day, and it's sort of a family affair. His wife, Patty, and his grandson, and other neighbors, we just kind of hang out. And so they also have a little self-publishing business called Fossil Press. They publish books for themselves or others, but they don't have any marketing. It's the two of them. It's maybe something they'll do in retirement. And so, summer nights, you sit on the front porch, and maybe you have a glass of wine or two or three or whatever. And Patty was telling me about a book she did. Her book was Amelia Prints a Greeting Card. A lot of the Rochester community is really beautiful artists. All people do all kinds of things, Kodak and lots of people. So she printed a book about woodcut printing. How do you do? And so this book, and I, after my wine, said, we should do a book, Micheal Photographs A Snowflake. And everybody said, that's a great idea. And so there we go. So July 2015, after wine o'clock, we decided to do a snowflake book without really a specific master plan. So I had all the content. I mean, you can tell I have all the content. I don't need more snowflake pictures, but Patty can't do any pictures of me making snowflake pictures until it's winter. And so we got to coordinate her to photograph certain pictures that we decided would illustrate the book. We have to have sort of how to do this and how to coordinate it. So January 20th, it snowed. And so she runs down to the house, and she already had appointments on her calendar. We don't really know when it's going to snow, and these are the particular pictures that she felt. She came and listened to me lecture at a couple places. Children, I've been to a lot of schools. I try to go to a school a month because, in Rochester, the STEM curriculums in a lot of schools is really, it's stretched. And I think that if we give back to kids at the right age, we can inspire them. And so I do that. So she came and learned how I do the pictures so she could sort of take me through the process to illustrate what she thought would be important. And then we met with a librarian at 2 elementary schools. We went to Webster, another town near Rochester, and met with librarians and talked a little bit about what do 7-year-olds need and how do we talk to 7-year-olds, because we wanted this to be a children's book. It wasn't going to be an adult book. It was a children's book. And what voice do you use? And all the librarians were great. They thought it was a wonderful idea, but they said, you're not going to sell any books. There's lots of books. We get offers to buy books, from everybody. So here I am at Clem and giving a talk, learning a little bit about it, showing them my pictures, and picking pictures that would be in the book, and I let the kids vote. They were all excited about helping us select content. This is actually an ice crystal. It's frozen solid, but its absolutely appearance is that it's melted. Think about the journey that crystal had, right? This one too. Look at that one. So there's Patty following me around. This was February because we didn't get enough good pictures in January that she liked. She was using her husband's camera and it didn't focus close enough and she didn't like the work. So now the clock's really ticking because winter's almost on the end. So we're needing to illustrate. See my garage? It's embarrassing. It's got everything that every garage has. And often I stand there just like that. Where the hell did the snowflakes go? You can laugh. It's futile. It's awful. Run to the microscope. Pick up my crystals. They jump to the slide. Then I focus, and if it all works, yahoo. And then I got to run out and try it again, because it's just that kind of rush. So that's our first cover. That's that's a book dummy. We went through this process. Adam, how are you doing for time? 0? Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to end soon?
Are you almost
I can end whenever you want me to stop.
Keep going.
Okay? So we looked through different processes, and the suggestions from the librarians that was you needed a glossary, you needed an index, and that your cover was scary. You needed a kid-friendly cover. And so what does that mean? So we started out with different kinds of drawings, which then led to that. And then my neighbor said, well, your dog's got to be in the story. They can be the snowflake hunters. So Reggie and Fievel got into the story, Frank's idea, looking through the windows. And then we got Lizzie Owed Me. So we have a coloring book page for kids that's Lizzie's drawing. But she couldn't let us use any of the original drawings because they were copyrighted to the publisher of her coloring book. And so then we move. We got to get to fast forward so we don't show you the PDFs. So CreateSpace is our publisher. It's an Amazon company. And you have a lot of different choices, and they offer a lot of different services to their customers. So they have access to libraries. They mail to libraries. They mail to schools. Different pricing for different organizations. And then they post it to Amazon for you from CreateSpace, which is just great. Marketing is what I do. I go talk to schools. And schools usually buy the books for us before I go. And often I sign the books for the kids, and I do little demonstrations about crystals for them. And we go to bookstores, and we sit and sign books. And we sit sometimes all day alone and laugh because you don't know who's going to show up. And then you get pictures from people that buy your book, which is incredibly satisfying. And then pictures of the kids coloring in their books. And then, another one of those kind of moments, I sent a crystal picture to the Rochester Museum and Science Center and said, do you ever have any interest in snowflakes? And I got a little display there. I got a room for 3 months. Yeah, it was pretty special. There's my microscope. Yep, that was pretty awesome. And then I got the Buffalo Science Museum to loan me original Bentley plates, which was pretty awesome, and the books in their bookstore. And then I got book reports from little kids. To date, we've sold probably nearly 300 copies of the book, all through the process we're using. We always say we're going to give ourselves a year, so we're coming up on our anniversary. We don't really have a master plan. We're kind of clunking our way through this. The content is not really time sensitive. You know, snowflakes aren't going to change over time. So I appreciate your interest in my story. I do have some books if any of you would be interested. I appreciate your attention and your support for my work, and it's been a great opportunity to share it with you.